on that.
It's interesting you say that. So when I was based in the UK, born and brought up over there, was working there, I remember one particular role. I used to love that job, and I was made redundant. Okay, this is sometime after the 9/11 incident, about 6 months later or something like that, if I recall. And I remember of what I remember, and it's a bitter feeling I have till date. You know, the bitterness has reduced significantly, but it's still there. It still exists in me. I remember entering the room, and I was not given any warning what's going to happen. I was told a month or two ago by my manager based in the US that I was going to get a promotion. So I was under this impression, this is where they're going to give me that letter of promotion. So I go in there, the HR takes this letter, passes it over to me and says, we've made you redundant. And I'm like, and we've given you X amount. And that's the conversation.
I mean, well, how does that leave people? It doesn't have to be done that way. And what does that make your feeling, you know, when you leave that organization? Imagine the people who have been in those situations, what they're for 10, 15, 20 years. They are spending more time with those people at work than they are with their friends and family.
Yep.
So you know, it's a significant part of their life. And then suddenly it's like an ejector seat.
Yes.
And what I've found is people just do not know how to handle it. So the way they handle it is abruptly. They make it as quick, short, sharp as possible, and then that's it. And then they just get on with it. And they put it in their own heads. They just think that's okay because that's the way most people do it. But you don't have to do it like that.
And it's interesting when that conversation happened, and I was just my mouth just fell down, and I was like that. And the reaction from the other side, from HR, was literally, it's okay. We've given you some money, which is going to last you at least 2 months. And all I was thinking, I've been working there for 4 years, put my sweat, my blood, my energy into it. And I was a high performer. I was like high performer. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation.
There's two problems with that scenario. One is they are failing to understand where your head is at to make that process more effective. And you are failing to understand where their heads are at. But it's not your failure. It's their responsibility to let you know where their heads are at. And getting into the other person's head is the key issue in how we're going to be able to create a situation to manage difficult situations and get the desired outcomes you're looking for. You know, there's a book I read called The Jelly Effect. Have you heard of it?
You've mentioned that to me in the past.
Yeah, it's, you know, it really, I use it as a training exercise for my lawyers as well. In fact, you know, we're talking about communicating effectively and lawyers over lawyering because of that. And that's actually one of the key reasons a lot of my clients sort of love working with me, because it's just very simple, clear conversations. You know, they understand in a broken down way, whatever it is. Not that our lawyers aren't great, but sometimes lawyers just don't know how to communicate. And the way that this book, by The Jelly Effect by Andy Bounds, is a sales book. And it says you do everything backwards. So that means you start with the end and go backwards. You know, when you do a presentation, right, or when you see a presentation, how do they normally start? Well, I started in my career in 1911. The firm's been around for 200 years and we are this. And you start to create the credibility of the, but actually when you go to those seminars, I don't mind hearing that at the end, but actually you've gone there for a purpose, haven't you? Whatever the purpose that you're attending, you're waiting for that person to talk about whatever it is. So what this book was talking about, which is what I'm talking about in terms of managing conversations, is start with the end. Why don't you begin with what the outcome is going to be, where you're going to leave everybody after this conversation is finished. So for example, Rohit, if you came into that meeting room and it was me, let's see how this goes on the spot. And I say to you, Rohit, look, hi Rohit, look, I understand you've been told that there's a promotion. I'm afraid that is not what's happening. There's been some changes in the organization and these are the things that are happening. I'm so sorry to tell you this. As a result of this is the process that's happening. And now we're looking at making redundancies, and you're one of those people that are being made redundant. And then I would explain what's happening in the organization. So it's not a reflection on you and your skills. Because the first thing you thought, oh, hang on a minute, I've given my blood, sweat and tears to the business.
Yes.
It's not about that. The climate has forced both of our hands to make a decision in the situation. And this is why it's you. So what's happening in the conversation now? I'm telling you what is happening.
Hmm.
And really, really importantly, I'm telling you why it's happening.
Hmm.
It's the why, it's the purpose behind the conversation that makes all the difference.
Hmm.
So if I start with the end and then I start to explain why we're getting to that end, your mind is better or already framing it in a way that is more digestible than if I start building it up like some sort of suspense thriller. So what's happening? Am I getting fired? Am I not getting fired?
Yep.
Whereas if we start with it, it might sound blunt at the beginning, but you can see the way I'm talking to you. It's not a personal thing. It's not about you. It's a terrible situation, but these are the decisions. What questions have you got? And you also have the dialogue. I don't understand.
Yep.
Why is this? Now, I may have just explained it, but actually, I also understand that all you've heard is you're losing your job. You don't get the details, don't register with people. And when you're thinking about that, what are you thinking about next? I've got a mortgage. I've got bills to pay.
Yes.
How am I going to sort those things out? All of the clutter and the static start to get in your head. So how about this for another conversation? What we're also going to do, Rohit, is we're going to introduce you to a recruitment company because we're going to see if we can help. Why not? We're going to give you a good reference. This is not about you. You've been absolutely fantastic in what you've done. This is why you're selected, and this is why the other people haven't been, though. And you can challenge that, obviously. This is not a confrontation. This is not a fight. So I will introduce you to our recruitment company or our contacts and put you in touch with them. Here's the number. They're waiting for your call. This is what you need to do. And if you have any other problems, you come back to me. Now, how differently are you leaving that meeting now than if it was a situation than the one you actually experienced, which obviously creates distrust? You know what you're going to do? You're going to talk to somebody like me. How many calls do I get, Rohit, where they are calling me because they haven't had an effective communication from the company? It's a little bit like somebody getting injured. You know, those guys that call the lawyer before they call the doctor?
Yeah.
It's exactly that scenario. And it can just be so easily avoided. These conversations are not hard. They don't have to be ugly. They can be done respectfully because it isn't personal.
Yeah.
Unless, of course, it is. If the conversation is, Rohit, you've been stealing, you're a thief.
That's a different
thing. Addressing your character, well, that's a different situation.
Yeah.
But we don't have to attack that. You don't have to take that approach at all. Does that make sense?
It makes sense because when I'm listening to this and I'm putting myself back into that situation, what I can see is options. That's the way it is. There are some options which are available, which we want you to utilize. So that's quite interesting the way you've come across that. Now,
and your future is a key as well. You don't know what you're going to do afterwards. You've been in the job for so long. What I do, because you're going to have to find a job. You know why you're going to have to find a job? Because you've got bills to pay and kids to feed and whatever else it is. So you'll make it work. And what we can do is do our best to help you make that work. I don't see why not.
Absolutely.
That is a good way to operate.
So